We got a very special show tonight, guys, and this is something that Momo Pineno is really instrumental in helping put together, reuniting me with someone that I met in the actual real world, which is really nice when you meet people, you put a face, an internet face with an actual name, and that's really great. I met this woman. Her name is, well, I'll tell you that. I met this woman when I was doing some coverage of Dr. Jill Stein, and she was very congenial, really open, very warm, and she was working for Jill Stein. I think she was communications director or something in regards to like the press. That's how I met her. Press director. And Momo Pineno said, Tim, we want to the purpose of this show is to sort of get rid of some of the conspiracy theories. I hate to use that term. Some of the ideas that are out there about Antifa. Her name is Melieza Figueroa. Figueroa. That sounds like Mike Figueroa, just like the Humanist Report.
That's right.
And she is a professor.
No relation,
though. No relation. And she's a professor at UC Berkeley, and she's here to discuss this with us tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Good friend and a humanitarian to the highest, Melieza Figueroa. Give it up for her. Figueroa, come on in.
Hey, thanks so much, Tim.
Thank you.
No, one slight correction. I wish I was a professor and I had that pay, but I'm not quite yet. I'm a PhD student, but I do teach.
That's what it was. Momo says you were teaching, and I just put that together. And I told you I would butcher your last name, so at least I'm very transparent in that way.
It's all good.
Look, let's cut to it, man. Folks on Facebook, people on Periscope, my folks out there in YouTube. Mel, what is up with Antifa? What is this organization? What is it supposed to do?
Okay, so number one kind of myth that we have to clarify about Antifa, as this usually in all caps is like this kind of ominous type of shadowy organization, is precisely that it's not an organization. Interestingly enough, Antifa is short for anti-fascist, which describes a broad political position and an orientation of resisting fascism. So basically to say that Antifa is like this organization of a conspiracy or whatever is kind of painting anybody who would be resisting fascism or against fascism, which pretty much means any decent human being, with a really broad brush. Anti-fascist resistance has been around as long as fascism has, for obvious reasons. When fascist governments come and want to genocide people, there generally are a few people who are going to say, well, that's probably not a good idea, right? And are going to try to resist it. The original anti-fascist action actually was in Germany in 1932. And it has sort of morphed and taken different incarnations throughout the years, but it generally describes a broad swath of activists, of people who like humanity, and people who recognize since World War II that fascism as an ideology is murderous, violent, and virulent, and a cancer on the planet, in our society, and that it must be resisted at any wherever it comes up. So Rock Against Racism in the 1970s and 1980s was a response to the neo-Nazi recruitment in the music industry and the music scene. And so, again, wherever fascism pops up, there's always some kind of group or some kind of a collection of people, right, that is going to rise up to resist fascism.
So let me get yeah. And then look, I appreciate you giving me that, giving me the history of where this originated and sort of like more context surrounding it, because I hear so many stories. So what you're telling me, so say, can we give you some examples of what it's similar? Is it similar to like a Black Lives Matter? Black Lives Matter is an actual organization, right? So
yes.
it's not the same.
Right.
Like if you just call yourself,
but it's also not a unified organization, right? Because you have Black Lives Matter chapters, you have, various affinity groups, you have, but Black Lives Matter, you can talk about it as a sort of, a coherent movement. And I guess, now that, fascism is gaining coherence among the groups of the far right, perhaps anti-fascism might be gaining more coherence as a force that specifically comes up to resist it. But right now the terms are fluid, right? Because there's so many people who are confused as to what is actually going on. Right? I mean, is it internet people? Is it neo-Nazis? Is it, so there's a lot of confusion actually in general about the moment in history we're in, the way politics is happening. I mean, and the way that the ground has really shifted beneath our feet, since the election of 2016, and sort of this time in which so many crises in our society are kind of, hitting a breaking point. So,
well, okay, so it's not okay. I just want to just kind of nail this down.
Yeah.
There is no one. Okay, so let's say I wanted to become. I don't think you need to ask anybody to become an anti-fascist, because it's sort of like asking somebody, to become a Game of Thrones watcher. I don't know, like
right.
It's like an ideology. Right. It's like it's a belief. Like, okay, I'm against this thing. If you're whatever you're against.
Yeah. I'm not cool with the idea of white nationalists and white supremacists going in and, genociding everybody. I mean, remember, like, and so anybody that is kind of has that orientation of like, maybe we shouldn't let these people kill a bunch of other people, can be described as anti-fascist. I mean, during World War II, our entire country was anti-fascist, right? And for most of our history, and most of our cultural history, I mean, everything from Captain America to Indiana Jones to, Nazis and fighting Nazis has been, kind of the acceptable expression, like the one acceptable expression of like of ordinary people resisting that actually exists, right? And so, I think a lot of this confusion, this this kind of fear mongering against resistance to fascism, you kind of have to think about where that comes from and what ends it has served. In that, sort of painting anti-fascists as some kind of, shadowy organization paid by George Soros or something like that, and kind of obscuring, I guess, the really obvious reason for an anti-fascist movement to exist. I mean, like, what would be the purpose of that? What would be the benefit to that for people on the far right who are trying to organize and trying to gather a mass base of support and acceptance in society? I mean, it kind of boggles the mind to think that people are trying to get you to believe that fascism has not been naturally resisted by decent people who do not want the horrors of the Holocaust to be repeated or visited upon their homes. It's kind of like, well, duh, right? Duh, you would go and fight these people, but they're trying to make it so that, no, we're just acceptable, respectable people. And why would anybody want to resist us? We just want ethnic cleansing. And, I mean, it really is this mind trick that's being played on the American people. And so, I mean, in some sense, we have to separate, right, anti-fascism as a general and broadly shared and probably much more popular than actual fascism, right? Mm-hmm. A shared position in society with groups of people that have used particular tactics to resist Nazis. And so, there you will see the stuff about black clad, the stuff about violence, the stuff about, punching Nazis. And, that has to do with a particular tactic called black bloc. Okay. Black bloc was a tactic that was originated in Germany in the mid-90s when people in Europe were resisting and protesting against free trade deals. This was also the time in which surveillance and widespread surveillance started to enter into society. It was being used by governments in order to investigate and arrest people who are associated with social movements. So in the 90s, the masking up, right, and being anonymous, right, became a way of sort of hiding and of sort of safety in numbers, right? So because anyone engaging in civil disobedience or any kind of high risk activity could be singled out by governments for repression. And so that was a tactic that has then been adopted by people in this era, right, where doxing and harassment and stalking of activists who resist fascism is very widespread and becoming very popular. So you can kind of see why this particular tactic of putting on a mask and everyone sort of dressing up in black to resist, to be the bodily kind of defense against fascists also makes sense, but for different reasons. And different people have utilized this tactic over the years. So, I get into it with a lot of people because who remember the Black Bloc from Occupy, and so do I. And I was critical of them back then. But it's not necessarily the same people who are doing this for those reasons, right?
Right.
So it's again, these things are amorphous. They are sort of ad hoc. And which is the nature of horizontal organization, which a lot of people aren't really used to. I think we're used to thinking in boxes, Republican, Democrat,
right.
And kind of putting people in those boxes and defining them. But that's precisely the character of this moment, is that a lot of things are shifting, it's unpredictable, and things are changing very fast. So, it's very, very important for people to sort of hold on to the realities of the moment, to kind of look to see what's in front of your face and not sort of assume things based on, things you hear in the media or even things that from just a few years ago, because things are changing. The times are changing, as Bob Dylan put it.
Now, right? and look, and I appreciate that. I'm wondering, and what are some of the activities? I feel kind of weird asking this now, knowing how loose these people are, this organization. I don't even know what to call it. Like this mindset. Like, how do you organize something when there's no organization?
Well, I guess we can talk about two different things here, right? So we can talk about the particular, media spectacle, I guess, that has been created because fascists have sort of brought violence into our spaces, and there are people who don't want to take that line down, so they kind of have adopted these tactics in order to sort of utilize and violence against the Nazis, right? But then there are also, I am a member of the Campus Anti-Fascist Network, which we don't mask up. We are not sort of these shadowy figures, and we don't go around punching Nazis. But we are ordinary students, faculty, and members of our campus communities that have also been feeling the violence, the harassment, and the climate of fear that has been sown on our campus for several months now. And so, almost as a way of, right, providing an alternative to people who, we were, for many, many months, until Charlottesville, actually, we were faced with kind of an impossible choice. It was either to kind of not resist fascists, to quote unquote ignore them, even though they were coming at us, right? And kind of be sitting ducks for violent white nationalists who carried out what they carried out in Charlottesville, or to resist them, to bodily resist them, and then get demonized by the media as these shadowy terrorists, these gangs or whatever. So the only way out of that impossible choice, in which the fascists would win either way, was for people all over who are sort of facing this thing to come out and stand together, right? Solidarity was the only way that we could actually build something that could resist fascism, not on its terms, but on our own terms, right? And Boston was the Boston rally after Charlottesville was a wonderful example of that, and that's hopefully what we are going to recreate at Berkeley tomorrow on our campus.
So let me get this right. If there's an event, say there's an event tomorrow or next week of some gathering of some organizations that have been identified to be hate groups or whatever, any people who want to go counter protest that event, if the people at that event that you're counter protesting can be labeled as fascist, then those people by ideology, just because of being in that location and being there for that purpose, they can be considered Antifa.
Well, and that's precisely why the term is like, and the use of the term and the way that people understand what that term is very, very important, and it can be dangerous if it's misunderstood, because what is happening now, especially at Berkeley, where the community has actually banded together to resist fascists and to reject their presence in our community, that the mayor had, after the August 27th rally, which we can talk about in terms of media misrepresentation, made a move to call Antifa a gang. Right. And the Department of Homeland Security has considered labeling them domestic terrorists, et cetera. Well, the problem with that is that, again, because this is a tactic that is used in the moment by diverse groups of people who wish to, who don't believe in kind of sitting there and getting their head bashed in by fascists, right? Because it is such a loose term, because there is no actual organization that can be put on it, it could be used by the forces of the state to actually repress anybody, right, who expresses dissent, anybody who shows any sort of resistance to fascism. And that's why it's a weird bind, because this is a situation in which you cannot rely on the state, and you cannot rely on police or police forces to actually make the judgment calls that need to be made, right, in order to actually solve the problem of fascist violence.
See,
right?
That's the thing. Now, what other acts of violence occurred besides Charlottesville? Like, give me an act of violence that Nazis, neo-Nazis, that occurred in 2015 or maybe 2016.
Well, actually, there's been several. Just a week ago, a Black student at Cornell was violently beaten up by white supremacists. This week on our campus, we have had the Proud Boys kind of on our campus, like even before these events, that they've been flyering, they've been doing hate speech, and they've been provoking people. I mean, during the February 1st demonstration against Milo Yiannopoulos, there was one of the Berkeley College Republicans who literally went around screaming racist epithets in people's faces for hours before somebody, it was just like a random student, just got sick of it and punched him in the face to just make him stop. I mean, this is the type of provocation that people have been getting. There have been, just in the last month, right, there have been white nationalists who have driven cars into trans lives sort of demonstrators in St. Louis. There has been numerous cases of doxing and stalking, which has just happened to my friend just a couple of days ago. There are, there have been nooses that have been left in elementary schools right around here. So there is, I mean, there's that thing about speech, right? Sticks and stones may break my bones, but right, words will never hurt me. But then there are words that are actually inciting people to take up the sticks, stones, and sometimes guns, right, in order to harm and kill people. I mean, I've actually have been trying to compile a list, but it's been, really hard to do it in all of this sort of organizing activity. But I can off the top of my head think of at least 10 violent incidences on college campuses that where people have actually been beat up. They've actually been, had murders attempted on them, and in a couple of cases have actually been killed, like the machete attack that happened last May, right, on a Kentucky campus, which 3 people were killed, by a person wielding a machete. We've had flyers put up here around the Berkeley campus and Berkeley community that literally call for snipers, and they kind of trying to inspire people to be like Dylan Roof. Dylan Roof himself, right, was somebody who was inspired by this white nationalist rhetoric to kill 9 people in a Black church. And so, just open the news and you will see this, uptick, this kind of becoming a tsunami of racially motivated violence, not just on our campuses, but in our communities as well.
That's very interesting. When I first looked at the issue, I remember saying, I have not heard of like these neo-Nazis. I hadn't heard stories. I hadn't met people who have been accosted by neo-Nazis. It just seemed like something. I mean, I know these organizations exist. Are these people a part of these organizations, or similar to Antifa? Do they just have an ideology, like they have a belief system, and that is, they may not necessarily be Klan members or neo-Nazis, but just they are perpetuating their talking points. You get what I'm saying?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's very interesting, sort of reading the books and the different things that have been coming out that have tried to kind of piece together this kind of social ecology of the far right that has kind of come up and bubbled up since Trump was elected. I mean, there's the alt-right, which is kind of like the internet trolls that then they kind of get off on like having their memes kind of influence real life in certain ways, and with the fake news and all of that stuff. Then there are the traditional neo-Nazi groups that have kind of opportunistically, I guess, allied with these folks. There's also new sort of neo-Nazi white nationalist groups like Identity of Europa and American Vanguard, right, who have been the 2 major organizations that have been flyering college campuses. And then you have like the sort of your standard Klan or whatever. But I mean, these seem to be, it is kind of a disparate collection of various movements that have kind of adopted xenophobic, ethno-nationalist, and rightist ideologies. But you are seeing, like you did in Charlottesville, certain attempts to unite them under this kind of banner of, whites are going to take over, and again, I suppose, and establish a fascist regime. So this is precisely why, because the right is starting to cohere and unite, precisely why we on the left have to come to an understanding of what time it is in our society, and that we also have to build what has been called since the 1920s a united front of radicals, progressives, and ordinary members of society, especially marginalized communities, in order to resist and politically defeat, not just physically defend, against the far right.
So if you have some people to come to your campus, and Berkeley just seems to be ground zero for this, it seems.
Yep.
And they're spewing, blacks are this, Jews, Muslims, Latinos, whatever. That in itself is not violence, though I detest it. I think it's despicable, it's horrible. And of course I want to shout those people down, but what we see is violent clashes between people who have, I guess, anti-fascist beliefs and these people. And the concern is, why are you suggesting these people are the ones that are initiating the violence, or are you going there with the intentions of, we came to kick some ass, y'all. We didn't come here just to shout you down. We want to kick your ass and tell you not to come back here. Am I getting a disconnection here? Am I getting this?
What you're missing, and what most people are missing, and what pretty much everybody has missed up until Charlottesville, is that look, if it was just a contest of beliefs, if it was just a debate and just a kind of, difference of ideologies, like whatever, I mean, we've had anti-abortion like protesters with like, posters of dead babies on our campus for a long time. We have like random nutbags, like doing like, saying whatever. Like that hasn't been a problem. What has been a problem is that these particular ideologies, this Nazi flyering, this this rash of alt-right and right-wing speakers and speaking events on campus are accompanied by this wave of violence that has almost gone under the radar. I mean, it's astounding, actually. When I first became aware of this in sort of February to April, I didn't know. I mean, I thought, I was like, okay, whatever, this dude Milo, right? But when I started hearing from my friends about how they were getting death threats, about how their personal information, they were being doxxed, their personal information was being published to these websites, and people were getting followed home from campus. People were showing up in people's classes, and things like I was hearing things like bounties were being placed on people. This sort of, I mean, that's the thing, right? I mean, it is not about free speech, and it is not about a contest of ideologies. It is about a group of people, or their particular ideology also happens to include this component of massacres, violence, and and actual violence against people that they are actively trying to cultivate on our campuses. They're trying to cultivate this fear, this terror, that is backed up with again, real attacks on people. I mean, just go to the Southern Poverty Law Center and you will see the number of hate attacks that have proliferated, especially on colleges, in the last 8 months. And this fear and terror is real, but you don't get to see it. It's not, I mean, look, the Proud Boys, the event is supposed to start tomorrow, right, on the Berkeley campus. The Proud Boys have been on our campus for at least a week. And it was the same thing with August 27th. The Proud Boys were taking pictures of people. They were, anybody who was like kind of going up to them to confront them was like, they were getting their pictures taken. They were getting doxxed. Somebody was just doxxed. My friend was just doxxed in his own class, that somebody took pictures of his class and posted them on Milo Yiannopoulos' website, where, then people were being incited to go and like confront him. And so, when you see these high profile media events, what you're actually seeing is the result of this, climate of terror that has been cultivated, where like, but nobody can see it. So media doesn't pay attention. The police, when, we bring these concerns to the campus administration, they basically respond by militarizing our campus and arresting the very people they're supposed to protect, while actually protecting the fascists from, so that they can sort of, talk with cops and get off scot-free, So what you're seeing in these confrontations is the kind of last resort, actually, that people have, because they're coming onto our campus, right? They are, they're invading our spaces, and yet we have had no recourse to any kind of protection or, admission of our vulnerability until, people who are scared for their lives actually have to sort of rely on these activists, from our activist communities who are actually willing to put their bodies between the attackers and the attacked. So when you see it happening, it looks like that there's just these two gangs that are going to war. But what you're not seeing is all of the stuff that has happened in the background, all of the stuff that has actually come up to this point where, they are coming for us, and then there are people who are moving to stop it.
Yeah, I remember a movie. I think it was Eddie Murphy. He did a stand-up routine. You may remember this, where he was talking about Rocky and how people go see Rocky.
Yeah.
and then they get inspired, like, you know, they leave it and they're like really pumped up because you get that feeling like, yeah, I could be like Rocky, and then they
Yeah.
want to go out and fight this guy, and it's like he wants to fight this like 7 foot tall guy, and it's like, you
Yeah.
know, what's wrong with you? And I don't know, I just keep picturing that. So like from my perspective, just listening to you, Melieza, and like I'm really new to like trying to wrap my head around this issue. But I think what you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, and just bust me out. I'm cool with it.
Mhm.
But there are people who are being awakened, sort of, by and I don't know about the word emboldened because I hear it so much, but sort of like inspired to like now act out based on these people coming to campus, and these people are sort of like the energizer. They're like the electrical conductor. They're the wall socket, and these people are plugging in these people. Now they got the power, and is that what you're saying? Sort of like these people are inspired by the Milos, by the Spencers, by whomever.
Um, you mean the anti-fascist or the
No, the actual the people. So
right?
the impressionable nutcases. I don't know that the hateful
Yeah.
bigots
Yeah.
now put on their capes because
Yeah.
this guy's talking to me, and yeah, we need to do
Right.
something. So you guys are like, oh no, you don't need to do nothing, and you need to go away. Am I kind of in the right ballpark?
You're kind of in the right ballpark. Yeah. I mean, so, you have, I mean, in Charlottesville, you kind of saw the full spectrum of folks. I mean, you'll get everything from like the Czech flag wearing, LARPers, what they call like the live action role play, basically they're like kind of internet cosplayers who like, want to like, just kind of mesh it up. But then you have that, and you have these hardened militias, right? As you saw, the Oath Keepers, the 3%ers, these militias that any of us who have grown up around neo-Nazis, and I grew up in a town that was the historical seat of the American Nazi Party on the West Coast. Like, so, anybody who has been around and aware of these groups for, their whole lives know that they have, they call themselves preppers for a reason, right? That, there have been elements in our society who have wanted a civil war for quite some time. And so they're kind of merging with these groups, and you have also a lot of people, especially in this moment, right? Especially in the moment after the 2016 election, where, you have this again impossible choice in that election between Hillary Clinton, who has basically created the economic conditions for a whole lot of people to be, angry, scared, and broke, right? And Donald Trump, right, who is still going to leave people angry, scared, and broke, but at least he's going to give them something, right? He's going to give them some kind of I don't know what he gives.
Pride type of thing.
Yeah, national pride, but I don't really know, because I have no conception of like his anything he says being appealing to anybody. But he uses the rhetoric of making America great again, of this kind of an ethnic homeland, this kind of out of all of your pain and suffering and uncertainty, there's a way to actually make this homeland your own, right? Which, I mean, this is how classic fascism arose in the 1920s and 1930s. It was, it's not like it isn't, but kind of is, like society kind of goes crazy, right? That, because people have become so hopeless, right, at the prospect of a kind of society in which everyone is taken care of, there are then a group of people who, will try to achieve that, but by drawing a circle around their own community and saying nobody else can have what we have, right? So it's kind of like that's what National Socialism is, as opposed to a truly socialist society in which everybody can have what it takes to, live a good life.
I think this conversation has been so great because
Mm-hmm.
I know for a fact most people, at least that I interacted with on my show, who people have called up across the country, they did see it as just a difference of speech. These people are
Mm-hmm.
speaking, we got these fans here and these fans here, and that's all it is. And why can't that just be a conversation about who has the better ideas and let the better ideas win? But what you're framing right now is these people. There are violent people who do
Mm-hmm.
violent things, and just because it doesn't happen in your community, like living near DC, I've never seen this type of shit, Mel. Like they don't come here with that,
And you never know.
you know what?
You never know.
Well, you know what
I
I'm
mean,
saying. I haven't seen
yeah.
like I don't know of any skinhead type groups
Mm-hmm.
intimidating Black folks or
Mm-hmm.
Latino
Mm-hmm.
folks or Muslims in the DC area that I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
And I lived here all my life. But you're saying across the country, different places, that is not something that it's not like you're seeing Bigfoot. Or you know what I mean? Like they
Right.
see
Right.
these things, and
Right.
just because it's not your reality where you are, don't believe that this is like these people are throwing flowers and
Mm-hmm.
we're just speaking softly like Jehovah's Witnesses knocking on the doors on Sunday morning. They're the people
Right.
who want to beat people's asses and they walk around punching people. And I think Momo was telling me he's known people who they just went around town punching people in the face. And we're talking about Nazis or
Yeah.
neo-Nazis,
Oh yeah.
right? That's their pastime. And just because it hasn't happened to you doesn't mean it hasn't happened. So
Right.
even if you don't agree with the pushback that there needs to be an opposition to it, at least you can understand that there is something out there that's not so nice that is happening. And these people have decided. Now, why does it have to become violence? Like the cops don't respond? What's the deal with that? What's been your experience?
A lot of what has been going on, right, has, again, they've been really slick at hiding the extent and the nature of the violence. I mean, when I was, helping my friends and people who were being targeted by these folks, sometimes I would try to explain what's going on to people, like in the media or even fellow activists. And I'd come away from some of those conversations thinking like, am I crazy? Did I suddenly just become a paranoid nutcase, and not know it? But these things are real, and then it's one of those things where I think it's very hard for us to imagine what sort of a fascist reality would look like in our society. I mean, we kind of have that it's not going to happen here,
Right.
we have free speech and everything,
right?
And we also kind of have this particular picture, we think that fascism is going to end up looking like a black and white 1945 German movie or something like that, right? And so we don't really have the framing, right, for this character of the new right that's rising in our country. The other thing, though, is that because of their intimidation, because anybody who has spoken out about being harassed, getting death threats, being doxxed by these people, are then subjected to even more harassment, right? And of course, because the police, the campus administration just didn't believe them, right? It kind of compounded it, right? I mean, one of the things that has changed for the better, and what we are seeing now, is that many more people are actually finding the courage because there is a lot more awareness now after Charlottesville that this stuff exists, that they are coming out and speaking about their experiences. As the Campus Anti-Fascist Network has grown, and it has grown exponentially. So, in the beginning, we were maybe about 10 to 15 people on a mailing list that were just kind of talking about stuff. And then after Charlottesville, it went, our mailing list swelled to over 400 in less than 48 hours.
Wow.
And, as we were sort of bringing together this network of campuses around the country, we started hearing the stories. And this is when we started realizing that this was far more widespread than anybody had thought previously, because now that there was a space where people could talk to each other about what they've gone through, now we're starting to see actually how widespread and how intense these campaigns have been, not just on our campus, which is kind of like their showpiece, but in the smaller liberal arts colleges, the community colleges, and even K through 12, some schools have been the subject of these, this really intense hate campaigns. And so, again, I think that where they had been successful in the past was keeping us isolated from each other, keeping us not aware of each other, and sort of manipulating the narrative in the public so that we would sort of look like the nutcases, right? If we tried to speak up about the experiences that were happening on our campuses. But now that it's become much more like widespread and acknowledged that this actually happens. I mean, the folks who were doxxed, there's been like 3 or 4 students and faculty who have been doxxed on the Berkeley campus, and they're like, I don't want to hide, whereas in like February there was nothing you could do but hide, right? Because like you were not supported by anybody, right? But now people are finding the courage and the voice to actually speak out and go as public as possible, because that in some sense that is the only way for us to actually get protection around us, is to draw our community around us, to get that solidarity and that support, so that we don't have to rely on like people who are masking up and in black coats or whatever as the only people who are like literally willing to stand up for us in any way.
I remember when Cornel West, back to the Charlottesville thing, and he made the statement, and that if it weren't for Antifa, we would have been smashed like cockroaches. I think that was something to that extent. And I remember people who were fans of Cornel West who questioned his comment. No, he's being he's using hyperbole. He's exaggerating. It wasn't that bad. So what you're telling me is you're hearing the actual opposite of that for a lot of people.
I mean, what I would say to a lot of those people, and what I have said to Chris Hedges is, if you think that it's not a big deal, come and stand in front of us. Then why don't you come and bear witness to what's actually going on? Again, it's very, very hard because we have not had an active fascist movement of this magnitude in our country for generations. That since Jim Crow, pretty much, right? And then only then only Black communities experienced it. So people who have kind of been privileged but with a comfortable life and not having to be in these spaces, it's very hard for them to kind of fathom what that type of violence actually looks like. We always think that kind of the evil comes like a movie, right? Like you have this kind of, it's very straightforward, and it's very, they have funky hair, and they have like, like these like lions in cages, and like in their bedroom or something like that. But, the thing about fascism and why it is so insidious is that it uses the cloak of social respectability in order to mask its violence, right? Like you don't have to, I've only recently been finding myself clutching my purse at like sort of upstanding young white boys and walking around Berkeley. But, it is very hard to see the violence if it comes in the guise of, again, these social norms.
Yeah, like Docker pants and
kind of take for granted white men as being respectable. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's like, why topsiders, you shouldn't be scared of topsiders, you just laugh at them, but whatever. But so this is part of the issue, and this is part of the issue of the alt-right, because back in my day, you could spot a neo-Nazi a mile away because they were skinheads. They had a particular look. They were part of the punk rock movement. And, those of us, anyone who has ever been to a punk show knows that when Nazis show up to your show, like there's only one thing that they're there for, and there's nothing you can do but just, hope you can fight your way out, but, and, this is what, many people in that scene used to encounter, but it's only people in that scene, right? And there was like all kinds of like dress codes and color combinations that would identify fascists versus anti-fascists versus etc. But now where the alt-right has basically used the veneer of respectability, they have kind of aped the language of academic institutions, of like nonprofits, of the think tank world, right? And even aped the language of our protests, right? Which to me is just, but they have kind of aped that costume on which to mask or barely mask really some extremely violent and genocidal ideologies. And this is really what comes to the point. If I could just make this one last point here, is that the appeal to oh, you shouldn't make waves because that's going to alienate a bunch of people, that kind of argument, that's kind of precisely the argument that they would like you to have, because again, this idea of what they are trying to do, to clarify, is that they're trying to gain power and influence in the wider society. They're trying to move from the fringes to the mainstream in order to gain political power. And to do this, what they are doing is they are appealing to the innate values of a white supremacist, misogynist, and imperialist society. I mean, they're kind of banking on the hypothesis that our society would actually welcome these people, right, in a time of crisis, because of its kind of default, right? It's defaulting to white supremacy. It's defaulting to patriarchy. It's defaulting to these things, which is why the, broader anti-racist struggle, the broader struggle against patriarchy and, and for trans lives and for Black lives, like, is so important, because in some ways, this is a battle for the soul of our society. And, will we continue actually to operate based on these currents in our society that have always been unacceptable, right? Or is it up to us to create a society in which the very concept of fascism couldn't possibly exist?
One of the things that this conversation has me realizing is how much race plays into this.
Absolutely.
Because as you describe the veneer, the idea of the respectability that this cloak, the way that they present it, and if you had a bunch of Black guys or a bunch of Latino guys talking about, we want these people out of our country or what have you, people would be afraid of that. It's because, like you said, you got Abercrombie and Finch, whatever. Yeah, you got those guys. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, oh, these topsider guys, these skateboard kids. What are you afraid of them? So it becomes sort of a where people they just don't believe those people can be scary. Like, it's like, you got to worry about these guys. But if you got a Black guy in some baggy jeans and some Timberlands on and a hoodie, well, oh my God, we've got to break out the National Guard. No one would question that. Like Richard Spencer became a victim when he got punched in the mouth. But Richard Spencer speaks hate. Like, Richard Spencer thinks I'm a mud person. That's really what he thinks, but the way he presents it, it's not, like you said, not a neo-Nazi. No, it's not in the higher learning. I remember the movie Higher Learning. It's not in the Marcus Stomper, whatever,
That kind of skidhead American History X.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Guys, yeah.
So that is, as you pointed, Mel, that is a lot more dangerous than the kooky-looking guy. That's why David Duke put on the suit and took off the robe back in, I don't know, 1982. Or whenever it was. Right.
Absolutely. And this is also precisely why, they're able to keep it on the issue of speech. That, like, everybody recognizes that their speech is abhorrent, but, they're able to get away with it and not just this, it's not just that they're able to get away with it. It is that they are able to turn the forces of the state, to turn the forces of police and, campus administrations and even legislators, right, against the people who object to them, to silence dissent. Actually, their free speech is used to silence dissent, to repress the opposition. I don't know if your viewers might know this, there's been more information that's been coming out recently, but one of the sort of shadowy outfits that has been funding a lot of the alt-right events, and which is called Turning Point USA, who has kind of invested millions and millions of dollars into sort of the conservative takeover of student governments and college campuses, have actually also sponsored with Republican lawmakers campus protest bans in something like 10 states. So, just as they're championing and being heroes of free speech on the one hand, right, they are on one level actually trying to legislate out any kind of protest that they don't like, right, from certain campuses. On my campus, what they have done and what we have observed happen like over the past like several cycles of these things is that even when there is no counter protest planned, even when student activists have actually announced we are not going to show up to Ben Shapiro. People didn't show up to Ben Shapiro, right? But that the administration spent $600,000 to militarize campus, to shut down student services, to cancel classes, right? And to in these militarized spaces, who are the people who actually suffer from that? It's not the fascists. It's students of color who, have to like walk through their quad and like just know that they're going to get stopped and frisked. On April 27th, when Ann Coulter was supposed to come to campus, there was several students of color who were arrested, right? And this one guy who is a scholar, what they call an underground scholar. So he is a first generation student of color that worked really hard to be on that campus, had to spend the night in jail because he had a pocket knife in his bag. And I mean, even this ridiculous list of banned weapons that they have for tomorrow's events, things like, hard fruit and batteries and laser pointers, or or what they have also said, any improvised weapons as determined by law enforcement, right? That could be anything, right? And that the specter of these of these shadowy figures that dare to resist these good old all Americans who just they don't want anything except to preach about ethnic cleansing and genocide.
Wow.
Oh no, what a big deal. That is being actually turned around to realize and actualize a police state on our campuses.
Mel, do you think that's an accurate
real state, the sort of the state role?
Right, Mel, you think that's an accurate description of like what Ben? Like I've never listened to an entire Ben speech or an entire Ann Coulter speech, but is that going a little far to suggest it's talking about ethnic cleansing?
Well, I mean, look, I don't know much about Ben Shapiro. I've been asked by them. I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't pay attention. Yeah. Well, Ann Coulter has actually called for, sort of the violent ethnic cleansing of Muslims and of the forced deportation of immigrants. So I would say, she goes a little bit farther, but, and like, I don't know what she is, but it is undeniable that they are either sort of useful idiots or active allies of people who are trying to initiate, a play for power, really, in our society. All these allusions to like the Reichstag fire, or Kristallnacht, or what the alt-right themselves refer to as the Day of the Rope, which is it comes from this white nationalist novel called The Turner Diaries, and it describes kind of like this apocalyptic, or for them, a purifying violence day that's basically a mass lynching that goes on all over the country. And I have seen people kind of look forward to it. I've had friends receive threats that along the lines of the day of the rope is coming. So, they're actively trying to create the conditions to which they can pull off a Charlottesville times, 1,000 and somehow trick the public into knowing it's okay, or at least just ignoring it so that we don't actually get to see the real dimensions of what they are doing.
The way I see this, and this is totally from a layman on the outside and just now having this conversation, I see it like you got these people, like I see Ann Coulter as an opportunist, frankly.
Yeah.
Okay. I see Milo as an opportunist, provocateur. Like, these people are trying to sell books and make money. I think they use dog whistles. The problem is the whistles, the dog whistles that they use in order to, to get the spotlight, in order to get the platform. It brings out the nuts. It brings out the real, so I think people are looking at Ben Shapiro, for instance, and say, I like Ben. Ben's witty. I heard people say he's a really great communicator, and he's up on these issues, and if you listen to him tell maybe some of the issues you might even agree with him on. It's not Ben. It's these guys over here. It's who comes out to see Ben, right?
Yep.
That type of thing. Yeah. So when people just focused on Ben and focus on Ann or Milo, they're kind of missing the picture. Yeah, maybe Ben is cool. Like, I don't know him, but he's bringing out a guy who wants everyone that looks like me to die. Like, and these people, they're dangerous people, and these people. So I think that's important to say, and I don't think I've heard. Absolutely. Why hasn't the media said, Mel? Like you're part of the media, right? Like why haven't they? You know what I'm saying? Like why is this the first time I've ever heard a conversation this sincere about this topic? And I've been looking.
Oh, I know, and I've been trying. I've been trying for a long time to get coverage for the students and the faculty here who have been targeted, who have been harassed, who have been going through this thing, around the time of the Ann Coulter event, where the violent rhetoric and the sort of the open expression of these murderous fantasies was at this high pitch. And I tried to reach out to all kinds of people, even progressive media, even the people who should know better, that, this was happening, and that, we need to have some kind of support. We need to have some kind of solidarity, nobody, nobody denies that there is an uptick in, racist violence, but the fact that a bunch of people were turning their backs and would not cover us, would not cover Berkeley, either because they were not sympathetic to Antifa and the Black Bloc, or that they were afraid, frankly, and this, as somebody told me to my face, that a lot of media were afraid of appearing as if they supported the repression of free speech. At that moment, the free speech narrative had been so dominant that there was no space to hear any other story, any other kind of narrative. I was challenging folks left and right to say, interview one student who has been targeted, interview one faculty member, one person who has actually endured, who actually knows firsthand what doxing is, what the kind of stalking that goes on, the kind of rhetoric. I mean, one of the reasons that I felt unsafe on my campus at that time was not that they had targeted me, but that they had targeted a woman from who was a Berkeley public school teacher, a K through 12 teacher, who was with the Refuse Fascism group and the By Any Means Necessary, a student group on campus, and she somebody had they had kind of focused on her as this, a central figure of Antifa because she had spoken out in the media about them. And, some of the threats and the rhetoric about her was so intense. The rape threats, the death threats, the bounty for her head, all kinds of stuff. And, she's Filipino like me. And I had to go onto my campus knowing that, this kind of talk was really whipping people up. And, it's like, are they going to care whether or not I'm actually that person or not? They might just see a little brown woman and like just go off and come into my classroom with a gun like that. Like you said, that's what I was afraid of. I was more than their actual talk was that, that this heightened type of bloodlust that was being sort of expressed online could just as easily get picked up and inspired somebody who's already on the verge of snapping, and like Dylan Roof, or like the machete attacker, or like any number of these violent attacks that have broken out on college campuses, to actually come and like parse into my classroom. Like, does it matter that I'm not her? No. What matters is that somebody is being inspired to actually kill people and actually actually do violence on people.
But see, that's the thing.
And again,
I don't think
Charlottesville,
right?
It took Charlottesville.
Right, but I don't think they're being inspired by these speakers at the school. More,
no.
That's the intention of their organizations, right? Like that's what they want to do. That's their plan all along, and they use these gatherings as opportunity to maybe connect and network. I don't know. I mean, I'm just guessing.
No, they use it to organize. Yeah, to organize. I mean, one of the reasons that Berkeley was alerted to what was going on was that a number of students from Berkeley had gone to UC Davis, which had hosted Milo in January. And they had witnessed firsthand the ways in which these violent elements were recruiting people, were like, organizing them and whipping them up, and then turning it around in the media. Like, once they had violently provoked people and people fought back, then they were twisting it in the media like, oh, we were being mobbed. And so, they saw first, like some of our students saw firsthand, the climate, right, that was being fomented by these groups. And so that's one of the reasons why the pushback against Milo in February was as kind of forceful as it was. People don't remember that a protester was shot at the University of Washington in January, shot in the gut by two alt-righters who had premeditated that online. People don't remember that Milo was going to out undocumented students at his February 1st talk. And that, and I can, sort of share.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. See, he was going.
I just didn't know it, Mel. See
that's
what I'm
right.
saying?
That's right. See, the because of the dominance of the free speech narrative at the time, and and that the students and the faculty had gone repeated times to the administration, even to the point of reading their death threats aloud in front of the campus administration, and the campus administration saying, well, we have our hands tied, like we cannot, disallow this person because it would be censoring free speech and then we would be sued and all of that stuff. And, basically telling them that nothing short of a riot would actually shut down the event. So, and I will tell you what happened because I was there, was, again, I have not had a lot of love for the Black Bloc. I mean, they're kind of here all the time in the Bay Area. And so like, after an event, like, okay, yeah, the smashing is happening. Let's go home, or let's go get a drink. The smashy is going on. Right. I mean, it's just been one of those things that like, it's kind of there, and, you kind of have to deal with it. But what I saw that night was something that was very, very qualitatively different. I saw a group of people who actually ask the crowd to step back for their safety. Wow. and basically concentrated on doing one thing, which was bust one window. Because again, the administration had made clear that nothing short of a riot would shut down the event. So therefore they broke one window in order to sort of crush that threshold and make them shut down the event. Wow. Nobody, not one of the 1,500, 2,000 people who were there on that plaza felt unsafe because of Antifa. A lot of people were kind of again, there were these Berkeley College Republicans that were going around screaming epithets in people's faces and insulting them until, again, somebody just got fed up and hit them in the face, into which they immediately then went to the media and then started saying about how people were mobbing them and everything. But this guy had gone around for like 2 to 3 hours, like just screaming the most crazy ass stuff, and then, but when I was there, that the fire thing went off, but which, I was told was an accident, but like, people were dancing. It was a celebration actually that we had defeated Milo. And then, about a 15 to 20 Nazis, actual neo-Nazi skinhead types, showed up on Telegraph Avenue. And that's where it kind of went off. But like, again, this is where people have to be very precise as to looking at the sequence of events. What is in front of their faces? On August 27th, Shane Bauer of Mother Jones was live tweeting that event. He, and I have the timestamps to prove it, he posted a video that was 39 seconds long that showed a right-wing nationalist actually pepper spraying people in the crowd before, 3 or 4 Antifa came on to him and like beat him up, right? And threw him out. Okay. I mean, not anything more than a nightclub bouncer would have done if like a crazy guy had shown up and started pepper spraying people in a club. Right. But then what I saw, and, on Twitter, it's kind of interesting because you can almost see it in real time, that a number of right-wing pundits started taking just 3 seconds out of Shane Bauer's video and then basically repeating the same line, these thugs, these thugs, these thugs, after showing 3 seconds of video of, and not showing the provocation that happened before it. So context is everything at this point. Understanding is everything. And also paying attention to the content and the outcome and the intention of these groups is very important, because I know a lot of people are not, they're not understanding what's going on. They're very scared as to the sort of the heightened level of violence that's going on. But this is where Howard Zinn's phrase, "You can't be neutral on a moving train," it's like, it has not hit home. That has not really hit home to me until this moment, because again, and I'm trying not to kind of join in on the whole, like, if you're not with us, you're against us. But if you look at the outcome of the sort of the public sort of joining in on the outcry against anti-fascists, then what are you going to have? What's left? No anti-fascists? Isn't that kind of what fascists want?
Yeah, absolutely.
People not resisting, I mean, Robert Reich even said, if you hear people like saying these things that you don't like, just be silent. I'm like, be silent? Like, that's your answer to this?
Yeah.
And so, this is,
I gotta admit, it's still,
yeah.
I still feel a little bit like, I feel like, are we amplifying what we hate when we if these dumbasses want to spread this crap, this garbage into the airwaves, or if these fools want to come out into the light where we can see them, like, I don't know if I think we should stop that. Like, come on out. I get that too, because that's what I thought too. It's like, hey, at least we know who they are, and but here again, the ground, when the Karl Korsch, when he was talking about fascism in Germany, he literally used the phrase, "the ground has shifted beneath our feet." And that's what I think is happening right now. So we have to think in new ways, in creative ways, right? As actually a nonviolent friend that I've been kind of going back and forth with has said, if we don't want to be violent, we still cannot be passive. And that's sort of what's going on. I mean, look, again, like I said, Charlottesville changed a lot. Portland changed a lot. Unfortunately, and I grieve that it had to take people dying in order for society to actually get at least some kind of inkling of what's going on. But I think at this point, again, this is where people have to think about priorities, and they have to think about sort of the outcomes, right? It is because people are passive
in the face of, black and brown youth dying at the hands of police, that has allowed this to get where it is. It has been the passivity of people who have tolerated, Sheriff Joe Arpaio and ICE, rounding up immigrants and putting them in literal concentration camps, which has gotten us to this. And it has gotten, this is where, again, what kind of society do we want, and how do we actually make that a reality, is becoming a question that's no longer abstract. Because for me, in our experience and what we are trying to organize, as we will see tomorrow in the Berkeley rally against hate, is to the only way out of the impasse that they have gotten us into is for communities to unite, actively mobilize, and put the protection and solidarity with the most vulnerable members of society first and foremost in our consciousness and how we want to spend our time, right, as community organizers and activists. Berkeley, what has happened in Berkeley has, where I sit, actually given me some hope, because this community on all levels of society, anarchists and priests working together, but a broad, people who usually wouldn't talk to each other, right, are coming together and saying, actually, no, protection of people, protection of our students and our faculty, and our immigrant members of a society, every single person in this community should come first. And so we are, we have been talking very deeply and thinking and organizing, in new and creative ways, so that not only are we defending against people who are coming to kill us, right, but we are also trying to, again, shift that narrative to the grounds where fascists cannot go, because they can't comprehend what that kind of solidarity actually looks like, right? So what it takes is for society at large to stand up and say, we will not allow this to go on. We will protect our people, and we will, again, make our community such that fascists, even if they show up, there is no place for them.
Will there be violence at this rally tomorrow?
I sure hope not. That there is no, I know that the sort of community defense networks that have been organizing with our coalition are making de-escalation a priority, and they are training community members in de-escalation techniques in nonviolent resistance. I don't know what the right is going to bring or what the right might try to provoke, but what I do know is that our community is united in such a way that anyone who doesn't go along with the plan will immediately show themselves.
Well, look, Mel, I want to thank you so much for taking time out to break this down. Is there something that I've left out, or that we've left out in this conversation, that you wanted to add before we close out?
Just that, again, Berkeley is not alone. One of the things that we are discovering in this moment is that, it is happening in a much more widespread and pervasive manner than we've been able to actually notice so far. And so if your campus community is organizing and speaking out about, and it's taking a lot for people to actually shift from that space of where we were just a few months ago, where people were just scared and distrustful of society so that they wouldn't speak out, to switching to, no, we do need to speak out. We do need to appeal for solidarity, and we need to call these questions. And, if that is happening in your community, believe your students, believe your immigrants, believe your people of color, and your disabled and transgender and those people. It is valorizing their humanity that is going to save us from the inhumane forces that are trying to gain power in our society. Like I've been saying a lot, as a big talking point, the only antidote to fascism is solidarity.
Wow.
And so when they ask what side are you on, you got to think about who you're showing up for and show up for them.
Amazing conversation. A lot to think about.
Yeah.
Mel, where can people go to find out more information or to get, to understand tomorrow's event, for instance? If you got any contact info?
Yeah, so we have a Facebook event, the Berkeley Rally Against White Supremacy. It is happening tomorrow at noon on the West Crescent lawn at UC Berkeley. So if you're in the Bay Area, please come out. We need numbers. We need eyes on the ground. We need people. I have co-written a piece for The Nation with David Palumbo of Stanford about the experience at Berkeley and kind of outlining this, again, these events that have been going on under the radar for so long. And the Campus Anti-Fascist Network at campusantifascistnetwork.com has been really instrumental in bringing together a lot of these campuses and, issuing statements of solidarity with different people and different faculty that have been targeted by the right. I believe that there's been numerous solidarity statements that are coming out for faculty in particular who have been targeted. One of the reasons that the right is targeting college campuses is because they want to purge academia of left and progressive thought, of anti-racist thought, and sort of what they call the sort of identity politics type of stuff. They put flyers on our campus accusing certain sort of professors who have taught and mobilized in solidarity with Palestine as being terrorists. And so there's like literally wanted posters that were put out on our campus for professors. And David Horowitz, again, who's allied with Milo and the sort of more traditional alt-right, should I say, and Turning Point USA have been on an active campaign to, basically sideline and marginalize and try to force out professors, even with tenure, who speak out about social justice.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
it's so again, think about what kind of society you want to fight for and show up. If you don't want violence, you need to work and show up so that violence will not be necessary, right? Mm. If there was a broad rejection of these folks from a broad swath of society, violence wouldn't be necessary because they wouldn't be emboldened, right? So what we need to do is kind of put them back in their place, put them back in their hole, so to speak, right? By definitively saying this is not what we want our society to be about.
Well, look, Mel, once again, thank you so much for spending time with us on a Sunday evening and breaking it down. And I think this has been a very valuable conversation. I think people need to they need to watch it a couple of times and really kind of get the points. Guys, this show is brought to you by TimBlackTV.com. Thank you for tuning in at a late notice. And Mel, I'll see you soon, and I will forward you the link to this broadcast because it's going to change once it becomes available. Okay?
Okay. All right. No problem. Right. Thank you so much, Tim.
You got it.
Thank you so much for giving me the time and the space to really lay this out.
Of course, man. Of course. And also thank you, Momo Pineno, for making this happen, my brother.
Yes, thank you.
I appreciate you.
He's been great.
All right now, guys. There we go.
All right.
Tim Black. Tim Black.
What a show.
Tim Black.
Amazing.
Yes, I am.
And you are done now. All right, guys. Thank you.
Tim Black. I am TimBlack.com.